You are now listening to The Survivors Series with Kyle Fields, a One Love Media production.
This episode of That's Life, the Survivor series contains extremely graphic content, including detailed discussions of serial killings, victim trauma, police response, psychological profiling, and systemic failures. The stories shared are real. The pain is real. And while we've approached every word with compassion and purpose, some listeners may find the content deeply disturbing. Listener discretion is strongly advised. If you are a survivor of violence, or if you're struggling with mental health, we encourage you to take care of yourself. You can press pause. You can come back later. Or not at all. Your safety, your emotional safety matters.
There's something chilling about the word serial killer. It's a phrase that immediately twists your stomach, sparks a morbid curiosity, and makes your mind jump to the darkest corners of humanity. America has long been obsessed with them. Books, movies, documentaries, podcasts. We turn killers into legends. We memorize their methods. We map their murders. But behind every cold statistic is a life. Someone who didn't get to grow old. Someone who mattered. So today we're going to change that. This isn't about sensationalizing monsters. It's about understanding how they operate, how they were caught, and most importantly, who they took from us. This episode is going to walk you through the most prolific serial killers in the history of this country. We're going to examine how they did it, why they did it, and how law enforcement finally stopped them. We'll break down everything from psychological profiles, FBI data, and criminal patterns. We will walk through the cases that shook entire communities. And finally, we'll talk about prevention, intervention, and where we are now. But before we dive in, let's be clear about one thing. We will say their names only for the purpose of education and historical accuracy. We will not glorify them. We're not here to feed the machine that turns murderers into household names. Because this isn't their story. This is the story of the people they took. The lives stolen, the families broken, the moments erased, and the chilling truth that monsters do walk among us. So buckle up, because this is going to be one of our darkest, most eye-opening episodes yet. So let's start with the facts. To understand the scale of what we're dealing with, we need to look at the worst of the worst. These names live in infamy, not because they were clever or charismatic, but because they shattered lives over and over again, without remorse. Each one left behind a trail of bodies, broken families, and cities forever changed. Let's start with the most prolific. Samuel Little. He was active between the years of 1970 and 2005. His methods were strangulation. His signature was killing women and leaving behind no obvious signs of trauma, making many deaths appear natural. The people he victimized were mostly marginalized women, sex workers, drug users, and women of color. In 2012, he was arrested on drug charges, and DNA linked him to 3 cold cases. After that, he confessed to 93 murders. His psychological profile reads as manipulative, calculating, and completely devoid of empathy. He specifically targeted victims who were unlikely to be missed by society. His confessions led to a massive FBI effort to verify these killings, including sketches he drew of his victims. Many were eerily accurate. Next up is Gary Ridgway, or known as the Green River Killer. Confirmed victims 49, yet he is suspected of 70 plus. Years active were 1982 to 2000. His method was strangulation, often with ligatures. He would dump bodies in wooded areas near the Green River in Washington state. The victims he often targeted were sex workers, runaways, and again, victims on the margins. In 2001, DNA evidence finally identified him, leading to his capture. His psychological profile reads as cold and methodical. He admitted to pretending to be a caring client to lure women in before killing him. His most notable quote was, "I picked prostitutes as my victims because I hate most prostitutes. I didn't want to pay them for sex." Law enforcement acknowledges that it is one of the longest and most expensive serial killer investigations in U.S. history. Up next, we have John Wayne Gacy. He has 33 confirmed victims. He was active between the years of 1972 and 1978. His method was torture, strangulation. Many victims were buried in the crawl space under his home. The victims he went after were teenage boys and young men, many lured in with offers of work. After suspicion and surveillance, when a teen boy went missing, police discovered bodies underneath his house. How he was captured. suspicion and surveillance after one boy went missing. Police ultimately discovered the bodies beneath his house. His psychological profile reads as this: dual persona. He was a respected businessman by day and a sexual predator and murderer by night. Law enforcement noted Gacy even performed at children's parties as Pogo the Clown. It was the horrifying contrast that shocked America. After that, we move to Ted Bundy. He has 30 plus confirmed victims. He was active between the years of 1974 and 1978. Method of murder: bludgeoning, strangulation, sexual assault, and necrophilia. The victims he went after were young women, often brunette, with a middle part in their hair. Bundy was caught multiple times, escaped twice, finally being arrested in 1978 after being pulled over in Florida. His psychological profile reads as narcissistic, manipulative, incredibly intelligent. He is classified as a classic psychopath with no remorse. Law enforcement noted that his charm and clean-cut image helped him avoid suspicion. He also used it as a weapon. Next, we have Jeffrey Dahmer. He has 17 confirmed victims. He was active between the years of 1978 and 1991. His methods were drugging, strangulation, dismemberment, necrophilia, and cannibalism. The victims he went after were young men. Many were Black or Latino and a part of the LGBTQ plus community. What led to his capture was a would-be victim who escaped and led police to Dahmer's apartment. His psychological profile reads as severely antisocial and an obsession with control and possession over his victims. Law enforcement notes that his case exposed racial and homophobic blind spots in law enforcement. Some victims could have been saved if police had just listened. Next, we look at Richard Ramirez, commonly known as the Night Stalker. He has 13 confirmed victims, ranging from murders, dozens of sexual assaults, and burglaries. He was active between 1984 and 1985. His method was brutal home invasions, stabbing, shooting, bludgeoning, and sexual assault. He was eventually captured by civilians in a neighborhood after being recognized from media reports. His psychological profile reads as sadistic, obsessed with Satanism and horror, and highly impulsive. His reign of terror caused widespread panic in Los Angeles. His unpredictability made him extremely difficult to track. That brings us to Eileen Wuornos. With 7 confirmed victims, she operated between 89 and 90. Her method was shooting. Her victim profile was men that she picked up while working as a sex worker. She was arrested after police tracked stolen items from her victims. Her psychological profile reads as severely traumatized with a history of abuse, neglect, and violence. She was also diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Her case sparked huge debate over trauma, justice, and the criminalization of survival. Next is Dennis Rader, or BTK, or Bind, Torture, Kill. He has 10 confirmed victims. He was active between 1974 and 1991, then resurfaced in 2004. His method, obviously binding, torturing, and strangling his victims. He took pleasure in their fear and pain. Rader didn't just go after one type. Men, women, children, often entire families. Victims ranged from 9 to 62 years old. He was finally arrested in 2005 after resuming communication with media and law enforcement using a floppy disk that was traced back to him. His psychological profile reads as a classic organized killer. Rader was meticulous, planned his attacks for weeks, and craved control. Diagnosed with narcissistic and antisocial personality traits. Day to day, he was a married father of 2. He was active in his church. He was a Boy Scout leader and a compliance officer for his town. His double life fooled everyone. Rader gave himself the nickname BTK and sent letters to media outlets and police taunting them for decades. He even wrote poems about his murders and included disturbing details. Rader's arrest was a shock. No one suspected the quiet, respectable man next door. His mistake? Trusting police when he asked if a floppy disk could be traced. They lied and said no, and it led them straight to him. His most notable quote would be, "The dark side of me was real bad. I didn't know how to control it. I wanted the control. I wanted to be the one calling the shots." His case forced law enforcement to reevaluate how they profile killers who maintain stable-looking lives. It also showcased how ego can be a killer's undoing. This is one of the most chilling cases because it reminds us how well evil can hide in plain sight. He wasn't a drifter. He wasn't socially isolated. He was the guy smiling at you from across the pew. These are the names etched in America's criminal history books. But what ties so many of these cases together is who these killers chose as victims. The ignored, the voiceless, the vulnerable. They exploited society's indifference to certain lives. And that's why they got away with it for so long. In the next segment, we're going to flip the lens because the world already knows too much about these monsters. Now, we'll talk about the victims. We've spent this time dissecting darkness, walking through the minds of monsters who hunted human lives without remorse. But now, let's shift the spotlight away from the predators and on to the people whose lives were stolen. The names we're about to say, they weren't just victims. They were loved ones, daughters, sons, mothers, fathers, artists, dreamers, best friends. They laughed, they loved, they mattered. And tonight, we honor them. After the show, I will be playing a video that lists all known victims of all the monsters that we covered here tonight. But first, we are going to start with Kimberly Leach, who, at 12 years old, was abducted by Ted Bundy outside her school. She was a bright, bubbly girl with her whole life ahead of her. She loved horses. She wanted to be a veterinarian. Her death shattered a town, and yet she is still remembered with love every year in Lake City, Florida. Kimberly Leach, say her name. Conorak Synthasimphone, 14 years old, murdered by Jeffrey Dahmer. A young Laotian American boy full of promise, whose pleas for help were ignored by authorities. His death wasn't just a tragedy. It was a wake-up call about systemic failures and racism in policing. His family continues to honor him with quiet grace. Shirley Vian, 24 years old, a mother of 3, murdered by BTK in her home. She died protecting her children, who survived only because she calmed them and bought them time. That is a woman of unimaginable courage, a name we should all remember. Anthony Hughes, 31 years old, a deaf man murdered by Jeffrey Dahmer. He was known as funny, stylish, and ambitious. He was pursuing a career in modeling. He didn't deserve what happened to him. None of them did. Ruth Pelk, 78 years old, a Bible school teacher murdered in her home. She opened her door to help a troubled girl and was repaid with violence. But her family later chose forgiveness, becoming an example of the power of compassion even in unspeakable loss. These are just 5 of the thousands. Some never even had their names printed in headlines. But tonight, we remember them all. For every candlelight vigil, for every birthday missed, for every empty chair at the dinner table. We remember you, not as a case file, not as a victim, but as a person. And we promise your life mattered. Your story mattered. And you are not and will never be forgotten. For all the horror we've unpacked, one of the most haunting questions remains. Are things getting better or worse? Let's look at the numbers. According to the FBI's Uniform Crime Reports, the number of active serial killers operating in the U.S. peaked in the 1980s, with close to 200 believed to be operating at one time. By the early 2000s, that number had dropped dramatically thanks to DNA databases, better technology, and law enforcement communication. But a 2021 Radford University study showed that even with this decline, serial killings still account for nearly 1% of all U.S. homicides. While that is a small percentage, that's still hundreds of lives taken every year. So what should change? Well, technology has helped law enforcement close cases faster. Databases like Codex or Combined DNA Index System links crimes that once seemed unrelated. Also, surveillance, cell phone tracking, and even genealogy have all helped to solve cold cases, like the capture of the Golden State Killer in 2018. But new challenges have emerged. More transient lifestyles make it harder to track both victims and suspects. Some killers are more methodical and less impulsive, taking longer breaks between murders to avoid detection. And others, especially in marginalized communities, still go undetected for years. So what does this mean? Is the era of the serial killer over? Not exactly. While we're no longer seeing the Bundys and Dahmers broadcast across every news station weekly, there are still unsolved clusters of disappearances across cities like Chicago, Atlanta, and Los Angeles. In 2022, over 30,000 unidentified human remains were still held across coroner's offices in the U.S. In many cases, especially those involving victims who are Indigenous, Black, LGBTQ+, or sex workers, they receive little to no media attention. They are still humans. They still have families. They still have loved ones, but yet we choose not to talk about them because it is taboo. Here is what is being done and what still needs to happen. Early mental health intervention in schools, especially among children displaying psychopathic traits or violent behaviors. Community policing that focuses on building trust so people feel safe reporting suspicious behavior. Better DNA sharing between jurisdictions, because serial killers don't care about county lines. And most importantly, we need to care equally about every victim, not just the ones with the loudest headlines, not just the ones with the beautiful backgrounds or the picture-perfect American lifestyle. Because serial killers thrive in the shadows. They depend on our apathy, our distractions, our assumptions. But if we refuse to look away, if we speak every victim's name, if we push law enforcement and politicians to treat every missing person as urgent, we can stop more lives from being taken. If your stomach's been turning during this episode, if your chest is tight, if you're furious, heartbroken, sobbing, all the above, good. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. For far too long, we've lived in a country where serial killers become celebrities, where documentaries are made about the predator, not the people, where networks make a killing, no pun intended, off of human suffering, and where politicians say they'll do something and then just move on to the next campaign check. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the lawmakers who tweet out thoughts and prayers while cashing checks from private prison lobbies, gun manufacturers, and corporations that profit off of chaos. Let's talk about how some of the very people in power receive money from companies that design the forensic tech used in crime scenes, but only to invest when it's too late. Let's talk about the media who plaster the killers' names everywhere, digging into their childhood trauma with sympathetic tones, while victims' names are buried in articles that get less clicks. And then there's the conspiracy crowd. People like Alex Jones, who had the audacity to claim that Sandy Hook was a hoax. The grieving parents were crisis actors, and millions of people believed it. They harassed families, sent death threats. And still, some refuse to admit the truth. This is what we've become numb to. But not anymore. Because I don't know about you, but I am done being silent. I'm done letting this happen in the shadows. So if you're like me, if you feel like me, here is your call to action. Number one, demand accountability. Call your representatives. Show up to town halls. Ask them what they're doing to prevent the next tragedy. Number two, support legislation that prioritizes mental health access, background checks, and improved victim response protocols. Number three, fund survivor resources. Donate to organizations that are dedicated to helping victims' families, that advocate for better protections, and that fight for justice. Number four, stop glorifying killers. Don't share their names. Don't buy the merch. Don't let them live forever in the headlines. It's not about them. It's about the ones that they took. Number five, amplify victim voices. Share their stories. Say their names. Remind the world that they mattered. Change doesn't come from comfort. It comes from outrage and heartbreak and the refusal to let this cycle repeat. So if you're listening to this and thinking, what can I do? Start here. Start now and start loud. Because silence is where serial killers thrive. This episode wasn't easy, and it wasn't supposed to be. We dove into the darkest corners of the human psyche. We said the names of the people who didn't get to grow old. We told truths most people don't want to hear because someone has to. Serial killers are not just characters in a documentary. They're not just mugshots or chilling audio clips or creepy reenactments. They're real. They lived in neighborhoods. They shopped at the same grocery stores. They passed people on sidewalks. And the terrifying part? Most of them weren't monsters hiding in the woods. They were ordinary. And they weaponized that. But this episode wasn't about them. This was about the ones they tried to erase. The little girls who never made it to their 10th birthday. The sons who never made it home. The women who were walking to work or leaving a club or just trying to survive. The black and brown and indigenous and the LGBTQ plus victims that were overlooked or ignored because of who they are. The survivors who still live with nightmares and the families who will never, ever stop grieving. We say their names. We tell their stories. We refuse to forget. If this episode shook you, good. That means you're still human. And humanity is what we're fighting for. So take that anger. Take that heartbreak. Take that need for something better. And do something with it. Vote. Donate. Educate. Speak up. Because evil doesn't win when it shows up. It wins when we look away. Not here. Not anymore. We see you. We love you. And if you've ever been impacted by violence, whether as a survivor, a loved one, a first responder, or someone just trying to make sense of it all, you are not alone. This has been the Survivor Series, and I'm Kyle Fields. And to those we have lost, we remember you. We fight for you. We will never forget you. I ask that you please stay after to honor the lives lost that will be scrolling on your screen. Myself and Mary did our best to find the names of all the victims of those that we spoke of this evening. Until next time, stay strong, stay safe, and stay together. I'm Kyle Fields. Good night.
This episode of That's Life, the Survivor series, was hosted by Kyle Fields and was written and researched by Mary Rodriguez. Produced and edited by One Love Media. All rights reserved. Special thanks to the victims and families whose names we said today. We carry your memory. The survivors who continue to show unimaginable strength. You are our inspiration. To law enforcement, forensic experts, and counselors working tirelessly to stop these cycles before they begin. And finally, our listeners, for showing up, for listening, for feeling. You are the reason we do this. If this episode moved you, please consider sharing it. Not for clout, not for clicks, but because the more people that know, The more people that care, the closer we get to change. Thank you for spending your time with us. We'll see you next week. This is Mary Rodriguez, along with Kyle Fields saying, until then, be good to each other, and never stop demanding better.
I walk the path where shadows play, through memories that won't decay. Echoes of laughter fill the air, though I'm not there, I'm everywhere. Through the windows of their eyes, I see the love that never dies. Even as the seasons turn, in their hearts I still burn. Gone but not forgotten. Love's a friend that holds the broken. Though the winds of time blow strong, in their souls I still belong. A whisper carried by the breeze, a touch in moments none can seize. Through every prayer, through each embrace, they'll always find a piece of grace. I'm a light you can't conceal, hidden in the cracks you feel. Standing strong when faith grows thin, my spirit's where your hope begins. Gone but not forgotten. Love's a friend that holds the broken. Though the winds of time blow strong, in their souls I still belong. Gone but not forgotten. Love's a friend that holds the broken. Though the winds of time blow strong, in their souls I still belong. A whisper carried by the breeze, a touch in moments none can seize. Through every prayer, through each embrace, they'll always find a piece of grace.